Hey, good afternoon. This is Pro Organic Belize's monthly speaker meeting. And today we have Dr. Ed Boles, and he is talking to us about the Belize landscape at risk to exploitation by a multinational company regarding Belize's water, the sea turtles, manatees, wildlife, all of that is relating to it. So this meeting is being recorded. And just a couple of ground rules for anybody watching. If everybody can stay muted during the meeting, because we are recorded, and as we all know, it picks up every little sound in the background. And if you have a question during the presentation, you can just raise your hand anytime during the presentation, or since right now there's only a few of us on there, maybe just do a slight say, hey, Ed, I have a question. And he'll stop and answer the question during the presentation. And just a quick introduction to Pro Organic Belize. If you can go to our Facebook page for Pro Organic details, which is facebook.com proorganicbelize/ our Facebook group for discussion on topics. And for any information about Pro Organic, how to join Pro Organic, what things we have coming up, our future speakers meetings. Our website has a wealth of information on it, which is pro-organicbelize.org. And this speakers meeting will be posted on the website, usually in a couple of days. And you can also see the speakers meetings that we've had for almost the last year and a half, pretty much since we started doing them by way of Zoom because of COVID. So take advantage of that. And we've had some awesome speakers from all over Belize and a couple of speakers that were out of the country. So that's the one advantage of Zoom. We also have a Pro Organic Belize consumer group where you can order pesticide-free produce. You would get on a weekly list, and the produce list would be sent to you by way of email, and then you would order directly with the farmers. And pickup is in beside Hodie's on Friday morning, or in Belmopon at the Blue Moon Market. So you can go to our website for information about that, or you can email proorganicbelize@gmail with any questions about Pro Organic or anything. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Ed, and he can start talking to us.
All right, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to chat about this extremely serious issue that faces Belize. More and more of us have become aware of this, the better off we are at being able to deal with it. We're actually up against a very powerful multinational company that has its sights set on Belize as a future production site for aggregates. And unfortunately, the area they've chosen happens to be one that sits in the middle of some very critical environmental situations, both land and sea, and impacts a lot of already endangered or threatened wildlife of Belize. So it's an issue that needs to become something of a wide-scale national attention, because I think we're going to be in this for the long haul. This story has a lot of twists and turns. There's quite a few things that have happened recently, and we'll get into that a little bit. But basically what I want to do is just to outline the big problem. By the way, I'm an aquatic ecologist, so I tend to look at the impact to our aquatic systems, both surface and terrestrial, and underground. And this does have a major threat to our aquifer system in that area, and consequently, the water quality over the reef. And I'll get into that a little bit here. But ultimately, what has happened is in September of 2019, a delegation from Vulcan Materials International from the United States visited Belize, and in particular, the Gales Point area. And they actually created something of a community event to announce their arrival and to win friends and support among the community. A big food spread and a bit of entertainment. Also some investment in some of the things going on, such as helping them update their community center, paint a new face on the community center and so forth to win support. And they were, of course, promising jobs. So in the initial phase, they actually received a lot of warm welcome because people thought that life was going to change. In the background, however, after meeting the community face to face, they commented that there was really no one they met who was considered to be employable. So they were actually not really thinking in terms of engaging at least Belizeans from that area into what they were marketing as being an upcoming job situation that would bring money into the local economy. Vulcan International, Vulcan Materials Company is the largest aggregate company in the United States. And it is a multi-billion-dollar company. It gets a lot of federal contracts, and basically what it does is provide aggregates for large-scale projects, roads, huge building complexes, anything that requires a lot of aggregate material. They've been in business since about 1956, when they actually were formed through the amalgamation of a couple of smaller companies to create the Vulcan Materials Company, and have grown considerably since then, largely due to those government contracts, and have expanded their number of mines across the United States, and have also created environmental problems pretty much everywhere they went, because this is mining. And so mining has these inherent problems associated with it. And over time, however, they've run out of areas to mine. Some of their mines now are being shut down because they're no longer producing. They've harvested what they can for any economic return, and they're looking for new ground. They began to look abroad, and they were able to establish a mine, the Calica mine, in outside of Playa del Carmen, a little bit south of the town. And that particular mine has a lot of conflict. There's actually been a documentary produced by local people to expose the environmental disasters that are happening. And there was, I think the film is it's called Calica, the mining company that devastated Playa del Carmen. It can be found on the web. I don't have that web address right handy, but it can be found on the web. And it is a pretty revealing report on the impacts that's happening, not just to the surface area, but also to the subsurface area. Just so happens this part of Mexico has some of the most incredible underwater cavern systems in the world. It is a world-class underground area, and a lot of cave divers flock to that area because there's just nothing like it. And this is, of course, being disrupted by the blasting that's occurring to break down the limestone that is ultimately pulverized and then sent out to the waiting vessels. In this case, they have a port that is connected to the land, and they have a huge conveyor bridge that constantly carries the crushed and sorted limestone out to the waiting vessels. They have these Panamex vessels that are kind of self-loading vessels that they use. And these are something like maybe 250 meters in length and probably about 13 or 14 meters in draft. So almost 50 feet of draft by the time they're loaded. So the area where the vessels come in to be loaded had to be dredged out considerably. So that's another impact. And they've been operating now for some time. And because of the devastation they created, they were at one point challenged by the government of Mexico. And eventually the government shut down the area, at least for a temporary period of time. But Vulcan is made up of lawyers. And it's not so much mining experts. Those aren't at the top of the rung. It's the lawyers that run the company. And they're in and out of lawsuits everywhere they go. So they have to be savvy to stay afloat. And they were able to actually turn the tables on Mexico and sue them for an astronomical amount of money for the losses they incurred during the shutdown. And as far as I know, I think they're back in business in outside of Playa del Carmen. But that's not really going to fulfill their total needs. So they're looking further south, and they put their eye on Belize, and particularly the White Ridge Farm Sugar Hills, which is a limestone deposit that you can actually see from in the landscape. It's actually a beautiful set of hills. And they, after the initial meeting with the villagers, they made the rounds with government and again marketed the idea that they're going to be bringing a lot of economic upswing to the country with their new industry, and probably won some favors within government. But at the same time, they also stirred up the interest of conservationists once people began to realize what was in the mill here. And a small group of people began to band together. And currently, I think we probably have about 30 strong people who have been involved in trying to figure out how to address this issue. And we have been pretty effective, apparently. We made our own video, for example. It focused primarily on the people of Gales Point, whose lives will be completely changed if this development goes through, even though they probably won't be involved in working for the company. Their landscape and the area around them will change, because once this company is in operation, or should it ever become in operation, the impact will be pretty severe, not just at the mining site, but traffic coming and going. They want to build a huge conveyor bridge that reaches from the mine site itself, stretches across the landscape, crosses the highway, and out to sea. And the bridge will have to extend almost to the middle of the inner channel. And of course, there they'll have to dredge out a tremendous amount of sediment to accommodate these huge vessels that they want to load the crushed stone into. And this conveyor bridge will cross the Hawksbill nesting beach, which is, I was at one point thinking it was one of the largest in the Western Caribbean, but it's certainly the largest in Belize. And it will, of course, humbug a lot of the nesting activity going on there. Even though the bridge will be elevated, just the vibration from the machinery is enough to disturb the nesting behavior of the turtles. Not only that, though, but a tremendous amount of blasting and other things that will be going on will also have an effect on other wildlife, including manatee that use the Southern Lagoon, one of the largest concentrations of Caribbean manatee. notice small upwellings that come up, and they're like stepping off into bathtubs. So that just tells us there's a lot of very active geothermal situation going on there. And we now recently have found out that this whole area is underlain by a huge aquifer that stretches all the way out to the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. And there's actually freshwater upwellings.
Ed, if you could just
up.
back up a little bit, because
Yeah.
your internet seems to be skipping out.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right. Yeah, I was noticing that earlier, that from coming from that end. Where did you lose me?
We lost you right after the vibrations of the turtles area.
Oh, okay. All right.
And how they were going to get this machinery installed, and then you were frozen.
Okay. All right. I'll try to back up from there.
So yeah, if you can just maybe back up just a little bit, because we missed that part.
Okay. And I was saying that with the blasting that's going to occur, because this is a strip mining operation, and they have to blast away the rock material before they can then collect it and crush it, sort it, and send it out to the waiting vessels. That blasting activity is going to have a significant effect, not just on the turtles themselves, but also on the manatee and other wildlife in the area. We see this around other dam sites, other mining sites where blasting is a routine activity. What we also were discussing was the geothermal upwellings. That's pretty rich in the area, and that just signifies that there's a significant amount of geothermal activity that we're not really fully understanding. But I heard, and I haven't seen the document yet, but I've heard there's been some recent investigations that reveal that there's a very large aquifer that underlies most of this landscape and reaches all the way out to the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. And there's even freshwater upwellings out on the reef area. This whole aquifer will be disturbed by the blasting. And when aquifers begin to be inundated by mining, it can change the actual flow patterns within the aquifer itself. And in this case, can have some wide-ranging impacts on all of the ecosystems around the area, including the barrier reef. This has apparently been a freshwater input that's going on for a long time. So there's probably habitats that are adjusted to this freshwater inflow. Any changes in that's going to change the structure of the ecosystem. This threat has, as I said, been addressed by a small group of pretty dedicated people that are putting a lot of time and effort into exposing what's going on. And we did produce a documentary that had a pretty wide review. And I put together a background document on Vulcan and some of the activities that's going on in other places, how the company came about, a little bit of their goals and objectives, their mission statement, and so forth. And I also drilled down on the impacts that we could expect from both to both water and land, and also to the air, because there's a lot of dust that's released in the air. There's a lot of noise pollution. There are other types of impacts that by the time you look at the list, you'll see that there's tremendous amounts of potential for affecting everything, including the lives of people, because this will be a huge disruption. It certainly won't be the peaceful, tranquil community life that we know today if this activity does go into play. It'll be quite different. The interesting thing that did occur very recently is that government decided that listening to the people, listening to the concerns and doing their own investigations, they put out a statement that there will be no strip mining within this area. One of the things too is this also goes contrary to the blue bond that was signed, an agreement that precludes any kind of development of this nature within the area adjacent to the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. And this would certainly have an impact on that reef, not just from the blasting and so forth, but also from the shipping. The whole idea is to ship aggregates to the southeastern United States, and that's what this is all about, is providing that market. So there'll be continual vessel movement back and forth as the mining operation gets underway and continues. So this will be a long-term situation. This is probably an estimated 50 years of aggregates. And not only that, but they're also very interested not just in the limestone, but in the granite, which of course takes more blasting than limestone to actually break down. And of course, it's also a harder rock, so the pulverizing and sorting process is more intense. So they're looking at all aspects of the materials that are around this area for creating aggregates. And ultimately, when the dealing is done, this would be a landscape that you really can't repair. Although they do make claims to put back the mined areas in some kind of reconstituted natural condition, that's really not that possible. And it's also hard to get a company to actually follow through on that, especially given the cost of doing business that way. So oftentimes they wiggle off the hook when it comes to trying to restore the areas. And that's some of the problems that they face in other parts of the world, and most of this is in the United States, where they're actually mining. So we would inherit a company that has a commitment to profits for sure. They do have language in their mission statement that they want to be fair and just, and they want to work with all the stakeholders in an open and productive way. But then again, we see their track record that's pretty well spelled out in. You can pull up all of these different litigation activities going on around the companies wherever they're in operation. And so if that were to come to term, Belize could find itself also in court and possibly on the losing side if they sign the contracts. But the good news is government listened. Government responded to the will of the people in this case. So that's actually a great story, because the voice of the people was actually heard. Now, on the inside, I find that getting that information from the inside from a realtor that is well positioned to know what's going on, the deal is continuing. The deal is actually supposedly, if it hasn't already been completed, it is to be completed by sometime in June. So Vulcan seems to be wanting to play the long game here. They're keeping up with the politics in Belize. They know everything about all of those who are in opposition. They know about our lives, where we live, etc. And they certainly know the decisions of the government, at least the current government. And what they will probably do is to continue the deal, purchase the land, and sit on it and wait for the next administration to get into office. but they probably won't be waiting. They'll probably be meeting the leaders of the opposition, getting to know the next potential cluster of politicians that will possibly be voted into office, and with the idea that they may get a lot more support and be able to continue on with their plans. So if the deal goes through, and from all indications are it will, that means that we as the people of Belize will have to be continually vigilant and make sure that we are constantly keeping the leaders of the country, whoever they may be, abreast of the will of the people. And in this case, it is pertinent that we continue exposing the plans to the wider population. So the word really has to get out. And if that's the case, the best scenario is that they decide there's too much opposition and they move on to someplace else. But unfortunately, it seems that they're pretty well heavily invested here. They've already invested a lot of money in putting down an escrow to hold the land. And they've also invested heavily in sending down a team of geologists to characterize the deposits. They've drilled quite a few holes, far more than they were initially saying they were going to do, and have taken back the cores for analysis. And they are certainly very pleased with what they found. So I'm thinking that they'll probably want to continue this process to acquire the property, with the idea that they will be able eventually to get their way. So, basically, we're in a position as citizens that we have to be continually vigilant, which is what we need to be doing anyway. Vulcan is just one company that has its eyes on Belize, and we need to develop, certainly, but we need to be very selective as to how we develop. This particular kind of development actually will disrupt a lot of the conservation that has been going on for years. It will reduce the quality of the environment that we're trying to use to attract tourism. So we've got a lot at stake here. But this is one company. There's many other companies that come to the country and look for their area to exploit, court the politicians, and eventually get into operation. And we know who they are now. We can think about these and some of the deeds they've done, and some of the mischief they've caused, some of the irreversible damage that's happened because they've been in operation. Karen, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question? I think your mic is shut down too.
Unmute.
Yep, there
Okay.
you go. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that right now it's like they can't do it because there's something in place. The government has made this announcement. You mentioned something
Yes,
called
right.
Blue Bond. What is in place now that would stop them? And how can we possibly make this a permanent thing?
Well, the Blue Bond is an agreement that the government has signed that will not allow this kind of development to occur in this very sensitive area. And there's a lot of funding attached to that promotes various conservation movements in the country. And that is all at risk if the government were to renege on that agreement. I'm not sure of the real repercussions. It's an international agreement, but as far as I guess as far as having anything solid that would protect us from a Vulcan type of development, there's really not anything in existence other than these agreements and the word of government at this point. But of course, governments change, and this government may well be replaced by the next group. And in that case, the game is changed completely. All those old agreements are set by the wayside, and there's opportunities to overturn decisions made by the former administrations and move forward with a new plan. So that means that we have to keep governments sensitized to the issue, the opposition sensitized to the issue. We have to keep the citizens sensitized to this issue, because this is an incredible, very, very permanent kind of change that will occur in the country if it is allowed to go forward. We will forever become a mining country, and Belize will be ground up and shipped abroad to be used as road fill in the United States. And I don't think very many people really want to see us go down that road, but often a lot of people just aren't aware of what's going on until it actually happens. Everybody gets busy, focused on their own day-to-day survival, and we don't keep our eye on the future. But as not just Vulcan, but these other companies began to make their move on real estate in Belize and setting up operation in Belize, we can see a lot of these kinds of negative impacts begin to become a common thing. Witness some of the large farming companies that have moved into the country and some of the damage they've done. And I've been working pretty closely with addressing those kinds of impacts. Whitewater Lagoon, for example, is I would call it a world-class aquatic system. It's an artesian wetland. It's almost like swimming in an aquarium. And at this point, it's been devastated, period. And the company that is at the root of that were also the ones who were put in charge of overseeing the health of the system. So anyway, those are the kinds of issues that we are seeing unfold today, because we do have a lot of resources. We do have. Yeah.
The artesian that you are referring to, is that the Coleco project, or was that?
No, that's here in Belize. That's here in Belize. The Coleco project that Vulcan is involved with is also a very irreversible situation. If they were to discontinue mining today, the impact that's unfolding from that is going to continue. It's a permanent thing. So this, if anything, this is a call for active citizenship, as you might think. It's a call for people to begin to pay attention to what's going on at the national level, even, and to begin to make voices heard. And we've demonstrated that can be done. Belize is a small country, and it doesn't take too many people coming together on an issue to begin to gain the attention of the country. And a lot of people out there are very sensitive to the development pressures ongoing in Belize. And we happen to be as a country, a very environmental aware people. We've had a lot of environmental education going on for at least 3 decades now. And the voters that are in position today are the ones that have already grown up thinking in terms of the sensitivity of our environment, and the beauty of Belize that's at risk. So I think that there's definitely a fighting chance. I don't think it's a done deal, even if Vulcan, we can't stop Vulcan from buying land at Belize. But we can stop them from strip mining Belize. But as I say, it's a long-term
Okay,
commitment.
so Ed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ed, do you hear me?
Yes,
Ed,
I
can you
did.
hear me, Ed?
Yes, I do. But I don't now. I think your mic is
I think we're
fading out.
having internet issues with Ed again.
So anyway,
Yeah, I think your internet connection is
this,
weak.
oh, you think it's my internet connection? Could be. I'm kind of, I've been having a good bit of success with this. I just taught a Zoom course for Galen, and I had good results, but it could be my connection. Anybody else with a question? Oh, I see your hand up again, Karen.
Maybe it's on my end.
And yes,
Okay, I was just gonna, am I speaking or somebody else? I can't really tell. No,
well, I think,
You're on.
oh, okay. I think Beth may have had a question.
okay, let her go.
Okay, hi. Yeah, my question is, there was talk a while ago that there was another buyer that wanted to offer more money and put in a spa and a conservation area. So
Mhm.
what's the story with that? The seller has to honor the option until June, and then is there any chance that the other buyer who has, I mean, is there another buyer, or have they offered more money, and will they get a chance after June?
Good
If
question.
doesn't.
There was another buyer. I'm not sure if they're still in the queue or not. But that particular group wanted to build a healthcare center, use about 30 acres or so, and create a healthcare center, fully staffed. And in that case, they would be using local Belizean labor, providing jobs and so forth. But then they were going to put the rest of the land in some kind of private protected status. And they were actually offering more money than Vulcan was putting on the table. But Vulcan was the first one in line, and they put down earnest money, which holds the deal. And they actually passed their deadline, I think 2 different times, but were able to get an extension from the people who hold the property. And I understand these are many of the shareholders in White Ridge Farm are elderly and are looking to sell quickly, so they have money for their rest of their lives, kind of thing, and to leave to their families. So they're just wanting to unload the property, apparently. But they have apparently locked themselves into the deal with Vulcan. One of the shareholders is actually the person who blew the whistle. He didn't want to see the property go into the hands of Vulcan. He'd much rather see it go into the alternative buyers. And so he's actually been a pretty heavy contributor to opposing the deal. But so far, the other stakeholders have maintained a hard line and have kind of excluded him from a lot of the communication. So it looks like, Vulcan is a huge company. They can
Was
have
that,
the-
was that gentleman the one representing White Ridge at the time? Because I spoke to him, if it's the same fellow.
He was, yes, because he's a resident here. And the others are, most of the others, I think, are living abroad. So he
So
was,
what was
he's,
the purpose of White Ridge Farm initially? What were they doing there? Just growing food?
they were raising, what was it? It was mangoes and other kinds of produce for export. I think it might have been into cattle at one time. I can't remember. Even in the early history, they offered jaguar hunting and other kinds of things there. So they've been involved in a variety of things over the years. But it was mainly agriculture of one kind or another, I think.
So what do you think people should do? What should we do? How can we help?
Well, I think the most important thing is to make this very public, so everyone should know about it. Everybody should, Vulcan should become a household word, and everybody understand what that really means, especially if this plan goes through. There are a lot of people who are users of the marine resource, that fishers and so forth, for example, tour guides and others, that are very much on board with preventing this from happening. So there's a lot of ground support out there, but we need to continue building that ground support. We can't stop just because, even if Vulcan decides to do nothing but sit on the property for a decade, we still can't let the public forget who they are and what they're all about, because eventually, when the time is right for them, they're going to try to move forward, and that all depends on whether or not they have the support of whatever government administration is in power. And of course, they'll probably be communicating with potential government, the potential ones that might go into power long before they ever get there. That's typically the way a lot of these large companies work. And they also try to work both sides of the fence just in case. And money talks. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. So it's hard to escape their influence.
So we keep the
Any
ball
other
rolling by
questions?
keeping it public.
Well, yep. Oh, go ahead. I've just gotten a message saying my internet is unstable. So I don't know if I'm breaking up or not.
The sound is okay.
I may have just lost. Oh, okay. Everybody froze on my screen
A
there.
little
So I,
bit, not too bad.
I heard the rooster crow, so I knew we were still connected. But that's, as a country, this can be kind of a healthy challenge, if you will, because as a country, we do need to be far more involved in what goes on in government. We need to exercise our citizenship. We need to communicate with one another. We need to work together to identify the real problems we face and face it with a collective voice. And so this is just one more of many challenges that have affected Belize over the years. It's just that this would be of such magnitude that it would be a game changer, because once Vulcan gets a foot on the ground, gets an operational mine underway, that's not the only limestone deposit in the country. So they will be looking for other sites as well. This is a growing market. And right now, the United States is desperate for aggregates, given that a lot of the sources have already been mined out. A lot of the other areas that haven't been mined out have been turned into subdivisions and expanded townships and so forth. So the actual availability of mineable resources in the United States is shrinking. And so they're naturally looking abroad, and we're just across the Gulf from the market. So that's a relatively easy trek for a cargo vessel. But as I say, our job, I think, is to keep the Vulcan issue in front of the public. We can't, it'll be a long fight. We'll have to continue this discussion just to make sure that people don't go to sleep and Vulcan be able to run through the back door and get what it wants. Because once it's here, it's here. Mexico has figured that out. Mexico has I understand they had like a $1 billion lawsuit. They lost, and so now they owe Vulcan. They're in the position where they now owe Vulcan rather than the other way around. And it's easy to get caught in that situation when you're up against a group of heavily funded lawyers. So we got to be very careful of the deals we make with these corporations coming in. But there's plenty of other opportunities out there, different kinds of development strategies that fit more of what we're about here in Belize. We just need to not take the first one that comes along.
Are there people in government that you know of that are
Hey, Ed,
sympathetic towards the saving of this incredible piece of land?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's important because I think
there
people
are.
have to support those people.
Mhm.
There are 2 petitions out there now. We've started one, and also there's one that's by the community, and they have quite a few signatures. But I think that, wasn't it, Osmani Salas, wasn't he involved in some kind of a program for conservation exchange? You would get certain credits or something?
Yes, and he's moved on to a full-time job with, I forget who he's working with right now, but he continues, in that regard. And then, of course, we now have another very strong 13th senator in place, and she'll carry forward her heart is in the right place. And there's a lot of people who are diligent gatekeepers that have connections with government. There is a tremendous amount of the technical groups within government, the technicians and the managers within the government departments that are still there. Whenever government changes, they're still in place, and they don't want to see these things happen. So government will have to listen to its technicians as well. But ultimately, the way our government is structured, all laws say, or almost all laws say, that you can't do this or you have to do that, except at the discretion of the minister. So that's one of the main issues that we have to contend with. But enough outcry can change even a minister's decision.
So you mentioned a woman who was very sympathetic towards the cause.
Janelle Chinona.
Janelle.
Yeah. She's
Chinona?
our 13th senator. So she's the replacement. And she'll do a quality job. She's been managing Oceana. She was one of the driving forces behind keeping offshore oil drilling out of the country, except for the 1 or 2 that did get through. But she kept the others. She and all of the supporters of that cause helped to ban offshore drilling in Belize, which is huge. That's also multi-billion-dollar industries that we're up against. and we won that one. And so, you know, we can win this one. But if you look at the amount of energy that had to be spent, the amount of time and effort that had to be invested to win that cause, it was literally years. But that's what it takes. And these companies can hold out for the long haul. And Vulcan is no different. So if they buy the property, which there's a possibility they won't, but that's a slim possibility at this point, I think, because they're so heavily invested now. And the resource is exactly what they're looking for their needs. So I don't see them going away. I see them buying the property and sitting on it for ever how many years it takes, which just means that we have to keep the pressure on. But as citizens, that's part of our job.
You mentioned that there was a group of about 30 people who were working on this. You know, is there a way that people can join hands with them?
Yeah, it's kind of an informal group, but it's made up of a lot of people from Gales Point and surrounding communities. It's made up of a lot of professional folks that bring their own input to the effort. There's a film producer. There's a variety of different people that have been involved, even realtors and so forth, and even legal people. So there's a lot of people that don't want to see this happen, that are well-placed people. They're persuasive people, and apparently our voice was heard by government. And I think that itself is a great achievement. We were able to convince government that they need to listen to the people, and they did. So
Is there a way that people can join this group to become involved?
well, I'm sure it's kind of an informal thing. I was swept in because I was actually called in because of my background.
Right.
And I was clueless until I was informed. I had no idea anything like this was going on. But now that I know, I'm going to keep it in the front of my agenda, because it is such a serious problem that has long-term repercussions for the country. And there are international folks that are catching on to the issues. For example, sea turtle conservation is a huge international group of professionals and organizations focused on sea turtle conservation. And here, the hawksbill sea turtle, which is a threatened species, is further threatened by this project. So that brings another group of international conservationists and organizations into focus. The manatee themselves also bring their cohorts of international researchers and protective NGOs and so forth into focus. So, you know, we need to probably work to build that international support, as well as building support from inside. And ultimately, Vulcan may go away. They may decide to sell the property and go away, but we can't assume that's going to happen until it actually does. And they, as far as I know, they haven't actually made the purchase yet. That's, again, sometime in about mid-July, I think is the deadline. And it's possible that may not happen, but who knows? They have said before that if they do encounter too much resistance, their strategy is just to move on somewhere else. But I don't know if they were actually saying that just to alleviate fears, or if that's really one of their working strategies. We can't assume anything, except that they are interested in Belize.
So I was thinking that this other company that wanted to build like a health resort there
Mhm.
would be good to contact to find out if they are serious and somehow maybe get behind them and find out what their business plan is, which would certainly be able to show that they can employ local people. And, you know, somehow come up with an alternative, because they're always going to say, oh, well, the jobs are going to be lost, blah, blah, blah. This has happened so many times with so many horrible things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm
Absolutely.
thinking that, and I did ask the realtor why they were turned down when they had offered more money. I never got another response from him. But it
Mhm.
might be good, he gave me the name of the company. It might be good if somehow we could get in touch with them and find out what their plan is, because it's always good to show an alternative to a situation when you're trying to change it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a far better fit for Belize than a company of this size.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the types of jobs of one versus the other, with the mining industry, you need qualified blasters, you need people who can operate the super heavy equipment they use. You need the mechanics that can keep all the equipment functional, and those are probably going to be outsiders.
Not too
They
many women would qualify, and that's an area where we really have to put some attention, because
yes,
female
right.
employment in the country is very low and limited.
On
So
the
that
on
would
the
be
other side, on the other side of the coin, if this were a property that was bought up by the investors that want to create a healthcare center, they're going to be hiring nurses, they're going to be hiring administrators, they're going to be hiring people, that we have right here in the country that can do those
Right.
jobs,
Right, right.
and the
So it
impact
makes
is going to
sense
be minimal.
to make that part of the plan. If we could get in touch, is anybody there able, that you know of, able to get in touch with them and find out if there's ways that we can support them in terms of what we would like to see happen, or what the people would like to see happen?
It's certainly something that we should definitely address. I'm not sure if they're still waiting to see if it'll play out in their favor or not, or if they've moved on. So I don't know really if they're still a contender here. But we should investigate that, and the best way is through the same realtor you're talking about, because he tends to know more about what's going on the ground. And if it were possible to reach out, and if they were very interested in the property still, it's possible that our influence could help sway them to stay in the game. But right now, it seems like Vulcan holds the cards, because they have put down the earnest money, and they do have the liquid capital to make the deal happen. The only thing that might dissuade that is if they realize this could become a long-term thorn in their side. That, like any big company, they don't like negative attention. And as a matter of fact, I've never even heard of Vulcan until all of this came up. I didn't realize they're the main suppliers of aggregates throughout the United States. And they kind of like to keep it that way. The less their name gets entangled in public awareness, then the more they can continue to do. So it might be that as I say, we need to open this thing up to the rest of the world. Everyone should know we're facing this kind of threat if they go forward with the purchase of the land. But that's a long term. That's a lot of time and energy that is required. It's we got so many other things facing us that we're trying to deal with. This is just almost like a continual energy drain. So yes, right.
We're overwhelmed.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. I see. Uh, who was that waving? Was it Mary? Okay.
Yeah, hey Ed, how you doing?
Hi,
I
all
had a
right.
couple of thoughts. First, I was curious about Friends for Conservation and Development. Have they stepped in or have they made any overtures about what's going on? Are they aware of the potential consequences?
They're aware, but they haven't really, as far as I know, put their name to anything at this point. Of course, they're dealing with a lot of conflict resolution and everything else going on in their neck of the woods, and it's on the other side of Belize from them. So they're like everybody else. Their heads down. They're busy focused on keeping their own boat afloat and trying to make progress with their agenda. But at the same time, this is not a regional issue. It's a national issue. It's not just a segment of Belize that's at risk. It's all of Belize. And so this has to become a nationwide issue. It has to have that level of awareness to really have an impact, I think.
Then
So
there's
it might
Nature,
need-
Nature Conservatory is another big organization. And if someone broke down and sent them a short synopsis of what was going on, they know.
Mhm.
That might
Yep.
be another group to approach. I mean, and there must be other ones that are international as well. And the other thing is, all these organizations, they have a facet called GoFundMe, and you would be amazed how much money gets raised, but you have to find a way, like, what are we gonna do with this money if they raise like $10,000 because people love Belize and they're concerned about. But we have to have a specific purpose, like for this money, we will do this, we'll do that. We'll help the alternate plan there, help develop farms, help develop jobs, things like that. So we prevent Bolton from stepping from, there's something already formulated there. Like you said, the old White Ridge Farm, bring back cabbages, bring back goats, cattle, whatever they need to do.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that kind of strategy is probably the front one on the table, because we have to broaden this thing to a larger scale, and getting these big players involved is something that would have to be done. It would probably take someone with that kind of background to pull that together. That's someone who's organized and connected that can make this a much wider issue. The same strategy that went on with offshore drilling. Offshore drilling really, the opposition to offshore drilling really began to grow legs when the international communities began to be aware of what was going on. And we got a lot of support, a lot of celebrity support, a lot of visibility around the world to the issue. And I think that's what really helped to defeat offshore drilling, because these apparently, I mean, I've heard rumors that we have some pretty serious oil deposits in the southern part of the country, and those areas are all leased.
They need to be
All of
protected.
Belize is leased, and these companies are sitting on those leases waiting for the opportunity to drill. And we were able to get government to put a moratorium on drilling, so that shut it all down. They still hold those leases. They still have the potential of someday getting to that oil, but not in the current state of government right now. How long that lasts,
think it
I
needs
don't
to
know.
be a protected area too, like for the hawksbill
Mhm.
turtles.
Hawksbill, yeah.
Yes, and that would help to prevent further devastation there.
Right. We need more researchers involved, and they have their own external connections, universities and and conservation groups and so forth. And well, it affects everything. It affects everything. It affects the corridor network. It affects all kinds of issues that are passing through that region of Belize. So it would be an issue that could gain global notoriety, just like offshore oil drilling did. But it took some high visible people. It took some celebrities. It took some connected people working in the background to pull all that together, that had a lot more skill set than I do for something like this, or many of us do. It took some outside people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved, and it worked.
Would be helpful to have a fact sheet so that people would be able to have like a 1 or 2 sentence that would lead in, and this is why we're opposed to this. The other thing is, I don't know if there's any area that is less at risk that the Vulcan could mine. Is it Karst they're looking for, limestone?
Yeah, it's limestone number one,
If there were
but
not-
they're
We
also
want
looking
them
at other
any
rock
place
types.
here, shipping us out, shipping
I
us
know,
up
yeah,
and shipping
But if
us
there was
up.
an alternative to a less dangerous place in the universe that they'd be able to mine from, but I don't even know if that would exist.
Mhm.
Let them make
Yeah,
flat
I mean,
their electric vehicles.
if we're successful in fending them off, then some other country in the world is going to become their target. Someplace close to their market, because the real expense of aggregates is in the shipping. But that's a fight other folks will have to gear up for as well. One of the things that was very interesting is when this thing started out, we reached out to opposition groups in Texas and other places where they were gearing up to battle Vulcan in one capacity or another for whatever project. We were hoping to get a little guidance and insight from these other groups that are up against Vulcan, and we didn't get any response. We didn't get any response. And I think probably one of the problems is they're not wanting to take on any other things, put their name on something that might take away from their ability to fight their battle. They were wanting to maintain focus. And I think that eventually we probably need a larger organization, because this is an international company, and it's got the power to maintain the long-term fight. And for us, it's a drain. For them, it's just business. And if I put a lot of time and effort into doing those things that we need to do, then I'm taking away from the things that I'm currently involved in. So you can only spread yourself so thin. But at the same time, saying that, we still have to address the challenge in front of us. But I think, oh, go ahead.
It would seem to me that probably the best course would be to contact the people in government who are on our side,
Mhm.
get some legislation going that will generally protect all of Belize from this kind of abuses. Which
Yes,
is
right.
basically what it is. So, and Belize is sort of known as a place to go for nature and ecology and so on and so forth. So it would just be in keeping with that image.
Mhm.
I think maybe get in touch with this woman, Janelle Chinona,
Yes, right.
and see if she could sponsor some legislation, and people can get behind that legislation that would set up a protective barrier.
That's a good idea too. I don't know how, what all would be involved in trying to pull something like that off, but certainly starting with Janelle, she'd be the person that could give some real guidance to something like that.
Yeah, I would think.
Because like I say, this is not, I mean, this is not just the only challenge we have. There's
Yeah.
many other, every plane, there's some person on that plane coming down with a plan. And many of those are fully backed by big corporations and a lot of money. Whether they're looking at building tourist resorts on islands, or whether they're wanting to build huge causeways across the water to connect resorts, or whether they're wanting to drill for oil, or whatever they're trying to do. There are plotters and schemers that are going to be constantly coming to our door, trying to access our resources.
That's what I'm thinking. One piece of legislation that would cover
Mhm.
or protect from
Right.
all of that. And Belize could take a great deal of pride in that worldwide.
Yes.
Being a place that protects its own and its hawksbill turtles and its parrots and
An
how-
overriding piece of legislation like you're talking about. As a matter of fact, we should scout around and see what other countries have been able to build something like that,
good
that would
idea.
provide a model. And we, you know, if we had something like that in place, instead of having to fight each battle, we could have this frontline defense that would allow us to develop alternatively, more holistically,
All right, well,
more
I've had my hand up for
community-based.
quite a while.
Oh, who's here?
I have.
Oh, yes,
some
there you
ideas on
are.
this.
Yes. Tim, go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
Hello?
You're on. Tim? I think we lost Tim. Tim, are you there?
Okay, I guess my internet's not working.
Okay, you
Am I on?
had your hand up? Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, what I found was, what I found was very effective in the oil situation when they were doing the sonic testing out on the reef. Was an Avaz campaign that I started, and then several people shared that campaign. And Avaz, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a worldwide petition organization.
Okay.
And, we raised over 100,000 signatures on that petition just in the first few days.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
then they see to it that the government receives that information. It's called Avaz, AVAZZ. And I could put together a proper petition if I have better information. So Ed, if you can give me that information, I'd be happy to do that. I have the time to do that. So that would just be a matter of me getting it up and sending it out to all my email lists and all my Facebook friends, and seeing what we can do with that. On the flip side of it, I know what was going on at White Ridge. I'm sorry?
There is a petition on Avaz that
Okay.
Organic Belize put up, but certainly look at it.
There
And if
is.
you think there's anything else we should add to it, we can. Basically, it just says that, you know, it's the government's responsibility to protect the environment and the people and the animals. And we feel that it's important for them to you know, legislate that.
Okay, but is Balkan mentioned in that petition or not?
Yeah, Vulcan is mentioned in that petition, and also the story of what happened in Mexico. It's also mentioned in the petition. And with a little thing saying lesson learned, or we should learn the lesson from that. $1.1 billion was awarded to Vulcan for coming in and destroying the land in the area where they're mining. So, I mean, people can make roads out of broken glass and plastic recycling stuff. I mean, they have to go back, these companies have to go back to their R&D departments and do stuff like that.
It's not quite as profitable, but yes, that's
Well,
true.
it could be profitable. I mean, you get a machine to squash all that glass and make roads. It's, I mean, there are other ways to do things. And
Well, we do have a bottle eater here.
we do have a what? Bottle eater?
I'm just saying if there wasn't a petition already up, that would start.
Well, take a look at it because the more petitions, the merrier.
The main information that I have available on Vulcan is the document I put together. It's about maybe, I don't know, 50 pages as I remember. And it has a lot of technical articles referenced, so it's pretty well documented. But it sort of outlines the impacts that we can expect, that sort of thing. What it doesn't drill down into, which is kind of outside of my area, is all the litigation that Vulcan is involved with wherever it is. And I think that's a story that be told. If you can see what you can expect if they do get into an operational mode in Belize, there's going to be constant litigation of one kind or another, either against them or them trying to force open new areas. And as I say, they're lawyers, they're accustomed to being in court, and they use the court to their advantage. So as you can see in what happened in Mexico. So that's part of what we would be inheriting if Vulcan were able to get a foothold in Belize. I was looking through all of the sites that mentioned the different litigation area actions against Vulcan posted on the web, but it was pretty overwhelming for me. I'm not a legal guy, but someone that had that background could certainly pull together a very revealing report, which would give us a lot more clarity on the actual behavior of Vulcan. And that might sway a lot of politicians to think second about this whole thing as well. But you know, we just can't let it be a dead issue, even if all they do is buy the land and sit on it. We have to keep the prospective politicians informed that might step into office after the next election. We can't wait for them to settle into their office and start changing the laws immediately. We have to be proactive ourselves. But as I say, that takes a lot of energy, but we have to be willing to commit something like that. I'll certainly contribute what I can. But I can make that, if you don't have that document, I can make it available because it does give a pretty good background on the company, and it does drill down into what went on in the Kalika mine, how the Kalika mine operates, that sort of thing. And there's probably the potential for creating a little bit larger coalition of people who are facing off Vulcan in other parts of the world. This might have to become a much larger contest than just one country at a time. I know that many places throughout the US, many states are ingrained in some kind of legal battle with Vulcan over deals not completed or agreements not met, or impacts calls that they're not taking responsibility for, and so forth. So it's a huge challenge, but it's not one that's probably going to go away. Sorry about my cattle dog. Let me see if I can quieten her down a little bit.
Give her a bong.
Yeah. But anyway, it's just one more challenge. And, you know, like I say, we've got a lot that we're constantly having to deal with. The big company that's moved in to grow sugarcane. I'm still dealing with those folks, and I will be from now on, because when one thing doesn't work for them, they try next, and by the time you find out about it, the damage is done. And oftentimes there's just a slap on the hand. So one way that companies advance is to break the rules, pay the fine, and then move on, because they get what they want that way, and it's usually not so expensive.
You're talking about Santander.
Yeah, that's the one that.
In my area, it was all jungle when we moved here almost 14 years ago, and it's
Mhm.
all sugar cane. All
And-
sugar cane, and the parrots are gone.
Yep.
The howler monkeys have moved onto our land. We have like thousands of howler monkeys that sing us to sleep at night. But it's tragic.
Yes. Right.
Tragic.
And they're not stopping. They're already expanding into other areas, and far more than they only their original plan was to only go within 10 miles of the mill, but now they've expanded much beyond that limit,
Wow.
and they clear to the riverbanks.
Yep.
Wherever they go,
And spray.
and government allows them to do that.
Well, this is why I think we need to foster some legislation that's protective rather than allowing these governments to, let their pockets get filled or their egos get padded so that they vote to accommodate those who benefit, who are the polluters.
Yes, I'm all on board with that. I would support that any way I could.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of big movements, trying to curtail government corruption, for example. That hasn't really gone too far. There's a lot of those initiatives that they start up big, but they tend to run out of steam, and things don't tend to change very much. And so we're left with whatever other strategies we can come up with, which are usually trying to reach out with our public voice, which is often hard to do. And a lot of people just don't get involved with things. A lot of people just pay attention to their daily lives, and they let the rest of the thing go by. And that's a mistake we'll pay for from now on when we do that.
We're addicted to our cell phones and our tablets and our computer,
Yes.
and we're listening to the propaganda, or I call it crapaganda, all the time. So it's very difficult for people to pull away from that and actually do some meaningful stuff. But I think you're right. We just have to keep, getting it out there.
What those same cell phones and the internet with all of its confusing information, those can be the valuable tools we need to actually pull together and to address these issues.
Yep.
I'll tell you a quick story about my current job situation. I'm now the at least for the next 9 months, I am the Hickety program coordinator for Be Free. It's funded by the Turtle Survival Alliance. And our job is to try to figure out a strategy for keeping the species, to help the species survive into the future. And what I have been doing is going to the fishers, talking to the fishers themselves, because we have the same goal. They want to see this turtle survive into the future. And what I'm finding is there's a tremendous amount of support among the fishers, which usually they're looked at as the opposition, but they're really not. And there are groups of, I would call them renegade fishers, that come into other people's waters and strip out the resources almost overnight. And those are the real issues. And they're actually taking away the resource from what I would call the conservative fishers, those that have fished those waters for generations. They want to see those waters continue. And that's the message we need to spread for all of Belize. I mean, we all want to see what we have continue, what makes Belize special continue. And when these large companies come in, such as oil companies and this aggregate company and corporate outside corporate agriculture comes into the country, it changes forever. It never goes back to what it was before, ecologically or socially. So we can actually not just lose our ecology, but we can lose our culture if we don't stand up to this. It's going to be a continual challenge, because Belize is well known as a resource base. And it also has a reputation for being able to get things done here that you can't in other places, because there's rules and regulations that are supported in other places. But that's not to say that we don't have some very dedicated, very focused, technical people behind it within every government agency that's wanting to do the right thing. But our legal system does put the power into the minister's hands. People who aren't elected, they're appointed, and they have the ultimate decision. So that's an inheritance from the United Kingdom, but they've actually changed their laws. They realize that that's not one that will work, and so they've made modifications in their legal system. We have yet to do that, but that would take ministerial decision to make that change. So here we are. But that's not to say it won't happen. I mean, there's a lot of outspoken Belizean people in this country who want Belize to be Belize, and Janelle's one of them. So she's a great person to have in that position.
Well, we should start with her.
Yes, absolutely.
And Tim, Bud, if you can look at the petition we have, I think we could make another one saying we want this kind of legislation that would be all inclusive and protective for all issues and all concerns relating to water, land, wildlife. You know, that might be I think the more the merrier. More petitions we have going around there, people can relate to one, maybe not the other, but yeah, and I think we need to get in touch with this Janelle, and Asmani Salas is no longer part of that program where the conservation program.
Well, he's no longer the senator, but he's
Right.
I forget what his current job is, but he's working in a high position within one of the larger conservation NGOs. My wife might have screamed it out. Oh, he's working with the World Wildlife Fund.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So we do have some heroes. We do have a lot of people that stand up for the cause, as they should. Environmentally, socially, and otherwise, and they take their beating like everybody else, because you know they're coming from a family that's red or a family that's blue, which is always held against them by one side or the other. But they persevere. They fight the good fight their whole lives. And again, Janelle's an example of that. She's been doing this kind of thing for decades, in different ways. She's head of Oceana in Belize and has been able to, as I say, to achieve a lot. An example too, which bears to be brought to the attention, is something like gill netting in the marine waters. That was a fight that went on for a long time, but what changed the tide of that fight was supported by the fishers. The fishers realized what was going on. They knew that gill nets were wrecking the fish populations, and the fishers began to speak out against gill nets, and that's what changed government. That's what changed their view on the gill net and pushed through legislation to remove gill nets as a tool. So, you know, there's a lot of support out there among the resource users who see what's going on. The fishers I'm working with, for example, are very supportive of what we're trying to do. They want to be involved, and that will help Hickety survive into the future, because we have the resource users involved, and they're, you know, they have close ties to, you know, family ties to Belize, and that carries a lot of weight. But we also need as much outside support as we can get.
So in terms of money, what do we need?
I hesitate to guess. I usually don't even operate around money very much. I usually get a job and roll with it, but I'm not much of a money person, but certainly it helps. And we need the kind of people who can make those kind of plans and to use those kinds of resources to the best of their ability. And like you say, this GoFundMe kind of approach has been working in many ways around the world. And people who do get the money and are able to actually use that money for what it's intended and actually follow through are achieving great success. But you know, it takes a team to really win the game. And I'm just one player on that team. But if we had some shrewd planners and politically minded people who could actually take up that role, I think that would give us a lot of strength.
Yeah, now you're on. I think what would help is having a figurehead, like make a children's book about,
Mhm.
could be Harry or Henry the Hickety Turtle, and that could be the mascot. And then people will get drawn in. What's going on with this turtle? Like what? And so it's endangered and why it's endangered. And that would start a widespread, because sometimes people get too overwhelmed when there's too much to try to
Yes,
solve.
exactly.
If they come back just to this turtle, and that ties into the future thing. And Karen, you are a wonderful
But
children's
that
book writer after Flubber. Is it Flubber?
Reggie
Flubber?
went where?
Yeah.
that actually has been done. And there's a really great outreach program that Be Free has been promoting for quite a few years now. And there's a lot of public support because of that. So that's definitely part of the formula. And my job is to try to help devise ways to push it into high gear. So by the end of my run, we should we should have a recovery plan that everyone's been involved in putting together, including the fishers. And we should have a lot stronger direction in conservation overall. We're trying to develop a hydrologic corridor through the lower Belize River watershed that protects not just turtles, but the ecosystem. And not to the point of taking it away from the resource users, but engaging the resource users holistically. They'll be one of the primary groups helping to keep the resource intact by wise use and by diligent keeping their eyes open to what's going on around them and reporting the abuses that they see and working with the legal system to address these illegal activities that are going on. So it's becoming more of a real community-based conservation movement. And that's kind of what we need. We need something solidly grounded in the community. Some of the most outspoken people in this effort against Vulcan are the community members right there in Gales Point and surrounding areas. They tell the story from the heart because it's their world that's going to be drastically changed if this goes through.
I think
And
they have a Facebook page, don't they?
they have a Facebook page. There's a nice video out. There's a variety of things going on, and probably will continue. This won't go away. We'll keep carrying it forward as much as possible, especially if Vulcan makes the purchase, which I feel pretty confident they're going to.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I mean, at the worst scenario, they could turn it into a piece of property for real estate development and make a mint if they never mine it. So for them, it's not really a loss. It's not money wasted.
So do you know anything about Leonardo DiCaprio? You mentioned that we need some kind of a star. I know he's doing some kind of an island thing where he's doing all solar and ecology minded stuff. I don't know if he would be a person who we might want to approach.
Might be an option right there. Yeah, that might be an option. I certainly don't have those kind of connections, but He
No,
might be the person that could be responding to something like this. And if not him, certainly there must be others out there.
Nicolas Cage, maybe. His
Yeah.
uncle is owner of
Seems like he had some kind of interest. I know I think he's related to
Leonardo, what's his name?
Francis
Coppola.
Ford Coppola. Yeah,
He's his nephew, I think.
I believe so. Yeah, and I think he has some kind of interest in Belize as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we may have to try to engage people of that stature that have a following. And then again, that's one of the strategies that was used in the fight against offshore drilling, and that made a big impact, because that brought a lot more visibility to the issue than would have otherwise happened. So yeah, we should definitely not leave a stone unturned. But that takes somebody that is kind of full-time and in charge of pushing that agenda. That's where some of the money could be spent, is hiring the right people to dedicate their full-time interest to moving something forward, and someone that had the right background to do that sort of thing. Yeah. And I can think of a few people that would fall into that category.
Well, good. Who are they? Let's get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some very talented and gifted people in Belize that do know how to make things happen.
That's great. I've noticed that too.
Well, any other questions? I know there's a lot. If anybody wants that report, I'll certainly send it to anybody that has an email, or you can email me at bzboles@yahoo.com, and I'll send it to you.
Right. It's excellent.
Beth, you had your hand up?
Yes, I do. It's, I didn't realize the questions on the Gales Point were gonna go on so long. It's a water question, but
Okay,
it's not exactly the same. I just happened to be last week, I took my grandchildren to go snorkeling, and we went to Silk Key, the very one where we went on Thursday, and the guys that took us out were they were showing us the old edges of the key from 1994, and how in less than 30 years it's gone to like 1/3 of the size. There was an article on Love FM like 2 days ago about that. They went out last weekend, a whole group of people, to start to put sandbags and actually physically rebuild the width of the island. And my question was, I have a friend who's an engineer in Belmopan that you probably know. Anyway, he says that the sea level has only changed like 2 inches in 50 years since he's been keeping track of it. So my question is, how did all this erosion happen? If it's not from the seawater rising, then are there more storms, or what made that key wash away, 2/3 of it wash away? Or is my friend wrong, and did the sea rise around the key?
well, I think several things going on there. Number one is that it's a very dynamic system anyway, and keys have historically come and gone as conditions change, and we go through these periods of long-term periods of more severe storms and periods of less severe storms. And then of course you add the human element in there. Stripping away the mangroves is the best way to lose coastal property or keys, and a lot of that's been going on these development projects on keys. But yeah, I don't know the real answer to there.
But like the sea level hasn't changed in Belize that much, has it, in the last 30, 50 years?
Not to my knowledge.
Yes. So that's why it just, everybody's global warming, and I'm like, well, I think we're going to an ice age, but
Yeah.
anyway, I was just, how did all this erosion in such a short, I mean, that's just it's not even a blip on the time scale to have in 30 years to have
You're
that
right.
key
Yes,
just
right.
shrink down to just seem like it's less than like 4 feet wide at the high part. You see the high water mark on one side, the high water mark on the other, and it's
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 feet in the middle where people are walking up and down. That it's just, and for them to say in 1994, they show where the rocks are on one side, that
Right,
it
right.
was, you know, it was maybe 30, between 30 and 40 feet wide, less than 30 years ago.
Mhm.
That's normal for things to happen that quickly. I mean, we didn't have anything, any huge, I mean, we had a few hurricanes, but have we had more ocean events? More
Well, you know,
storms?
even with Bird Key, for example,
Mm.
is disappearing.
Yes.
It's almost gone. And a combination of things happened there. There was a hurricane that knocked down some of the larger mangroves, and it lost that strength of enforcement of the island. But also what happened was development occurring in other areas away from the key, particularly when it came to dredging. When you start changing the level of the seabed, then it sets into play a whole assortment of compensation activities that fill in that open area, and that might and that actually help to erode the key itself, because these two developments that are occurring off away from the key actually probably contributed to the erosion as well. So the loss of the mangroves from the storm and from the effects of destabilizing the riverbed has probably contributed to that. And that's me just looking at it from an uninformed perspective. I don't really have the background to the marine geology or
If you're
morphology background.
uninformed, we're doomed. You're the most
Well,
informed person, and we appreciate very much your sharing the information with us, truly.
so
You're very
I
generous with your time.
certainly appreciate the opportunity, but I do know far less than I'm accused of, I have to say, because it's a complicated world out there, and I struggle to stay on top of the small piece that I'm trying to at least excel in, which in my case is all largely focused on rivers, but that's a big job in itself. But there's a lot of young people coming out of the university that are far more informed and have access to a lot more tools and knowledge than I do. So I try to open the way for those guys to get involved.
They can learn from you.
Well,
That's
as
what we old folks are supposed to be doing now. is
that's
passing
right.
down.
Well, we know a lot more because we made a lot more mistakes. So, and if
Right,
you're
right.
learning
And
from your
we-
mistakes, then you know pretty good bit then at the end of a
Right.
lifetime. So
For
our
sure.
job's to pass it along.
Yeah, pass it on.
Well,
Great.
I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about these serious issues, and they're the issues that we need to talk about even more. And we've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way. And I think I just want to underscore that I think it's phenomenal that our government listened, our government responded, and that's the kind of government we need. We need a government that listens to the people. Whether that happens in every case or not, it's another story. And certainly whether it happens in every administration is also another wild card. But we basically get the government that we work for. And that's where we are right now. We just need to be more proactive citizens. Yes, Mary.
Excuse me. I just had a promotion for everyone that's listening to come to the National Agriculture Trade Show on May 29th
Yes.
at 1 p.m. And we will be more engaged in this. And if you spread the word for people to come, it's called Farmer Workshops in the Pro Organic Belize, and you'll see Ed there at 1 o'clock on Sunday, May 29th. So everyone's invited. It's a big space, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest and a lot more evolution by that time. Everything
Good.
happens in increments, so
Yes.
thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you, Ed.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Mary did the promotion for Ed on May 29th at the Nats Fair. And our next speaker meeting will be Saturday, June the 4th at 3 o'clock. And it will be about chocolate again,
All
growing
right.
from Oshmul Coffee, which is just outside of San Antonio Village, I believe. So everybody, please join us for that. And we will say happy Saturday afternoon and enjoy the rest of it. And thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great presentation.
And my dogs are reminding me it's time to go play ball.
Yes.
Or give them a bone.
So are your dogs named